This is Dave Meltzer with Entrepreneurs the Playbook, and I have Andrew Bernstein. That's right, the NBA Hall of Fame photographer and the podcast host of the Legends of Sports. Welcome to the Playbook, Andrew.
David, so thrilled to be on with you, man. Thanks for having me.
You know, our careers are similar in the respect that a lot of people probably look at where we're at today as we're middle-aged men going, oh, those guys are so lucky. Give me first to start your perspective on how lucky you are and your perspective of luck in general.
I thought you were going to say, oh, those guys are so old.
That's true. I didn't want to say that, but that's true for sure.
Yeah.
They're too old to have a podcast. What are they doing?
Yeah. Who knew for podcasts like 5 years ago, right?
I know.
Well, David, that's a great question. And I have to harken back to my good friend, the legendary, the Mount Rushmore of photographers, Walter Yost, who says that one of his great sayings is that luck benefits the most prepared. I mean, you've heard versions of that, but that coming from Walter in my business has meant a lot for the 40 years I've been in doing this crazy job. And I've always prided myself in preparation. I've always enjoyed that part of it, because if I'm not prepared, then I'm not bringing the full arsenal with me, and I found that in my photography, but I also found that now in my podcasting, that I can't half-ass this thing. I know that you came on with me, you were briefed about my history, maybe you talked to our mutual friend Richard Jaffe, whatever, and I do the same thing, and it's all about bringing the best product forward, whether it's I'm producing a photograph or I'm actually producing a podcast.
And, it takes time to be prepared, and it takes time to grow and accelerate what we're doing. And I think, the most frustrating thing in my vision and goal of helping people is, as much as I could teach them the lessons, I can't create the consistency and persistency that's necessary to allow them to fulfill their dreams, to fulfill their destiny, to fulfill their passion, purpose, and profitability as well. And, they look at things, a lot of people, and just think, I want to start at the top. I want to do exactly what I want to do. And, it's such a detriment. And then those people that are willing to invest in themselves, they get impatient because they don't see the results early on. So I thought maybe you could share where you started, but also how you were feeling when you started with those first jobs.
Well, wow, that's a lot to remember. I do remember. I do remember having a very early passion for photography, and I always loved sports on one hand, right? And I loved playing sports. I grew up in Brooklyn. We used to play tackle football in the snow on concrete. It was just crazy as kids. But I loved playing every kind of sport out there, except I was the shortest kid on the block. And I knew I would never, ever in a million years play varsity in my high school or anything like that.
I wish I lived on your block, Andrew, because then you could have been the second shortest.
Yeah, but at least you went on and you actually did something with your prowess, right, in football. Yeah. Anyway, I took a passion to photography very early, a liking to it, because my dad bought me a camera when I was 14. We took a trip out to all the Western national parks, and I just saw that I was able to express myself. I wasn't a very shy kid, but I found a way to express myself through my photography, and it was very cathartic, and it was very liberating in a way. And then when I was introduced to the magic of the darkroom back in the day, people don't even know what I'm talking about, but right. but when I saw that first print come up in my friend Andrew Feldman's basement darkroom in Brooklyn, I mean, it was like yesterday. This is like 50 years ago. It just was literally like a magic trick to me. And I kind of knew that this is the path I wanted to take. I had no idea that you could make a career out of it. You're a kid. I was 14, 15, but I knew it was something that I enjoyed, and I knew that it gave me some validation. As like the shortest kid, but also sort of the class clown. But I always had a camera around with me. And things got really serious when I got to the University of Massachusetts. And I love telling this story, but I got there, and back in the day, David, you remember that you used to have to write to the registrar and get the course catalog, right? There was nothing online or anything.
Right.
So
It's
they
actually
sent
a
you,
catalog.
right. So I applied to a bunch of schools. I got the course catalog, and I'm looking through it, and I'm thinking, well, I want to be close to home. I don't want to go to school with any kids that I actually grew up with, but I wanted to, be within 3-4 hours of home, and Amherst, Massachusetts was perfect. And so I looked through the course catalog. Oh, they have a communications department, but I didn't really look too far into that, thinking that, well, photography is part of communication. So I get to UMass and I start, enrolling in classes, and I realize they don't have any photography classes there. But they did have a daily newspaper, which was a godsend to me. And it was a very prestigious college paper, 5 days a week. And 2 weeks into my freshman year, they made me assistant photo editor because no one else wanted to do it. But I learned everything from the inside, and that passion just continued to the point where I had to take it to the next level and learn really the science, the history, all the creative aspects of photography. So I packed it up, the blizzard of '78, moved out here to LA, and I went to Art Center and graduated from there. And through connections at Art Center and teachers that believed in me and mentors that are still with me as valued people in my life, I was introduced to photographers from Sports Illustrated, and that's really got that first crack in the door for me. And being a Brooklyn guy, when I see a crack in the door, I'm able to kind of stick my whole foot in there.
Yeah. Well, and that's what it takes, right? I mean, there are a lot of people, these opportunities don't come from not asking and not asking for help and not looking for opportunity and being aggressive. I call it being a ferocious Buddha in respect, but I do believe, we have to participate in what we're doing. Now, you, like me, one of the gifts we've been given in our careers is surrounding ourselves with the right people and the right ideas. And from very early on, whether it was Dr. J or Kobe Bryant, and Richard Jaffe is another one of our shared mentors and friends, just the best of the best. And one of the things, I feel blessed about is I feel like Napoleon Hill in my career, but nobody commissioned me, to go around and be able to learn from all these people. But I've always taken that approach of being more interested than interesting. What are some of the commonalities between what I call the spirit of excellence people, the people who, whether it's sports, entertainment, business, that you've been around with leagues, venues, teams, athletes, celebrities, all the things you get to do as a photographer, what is that secret sauce that you see as a commonality between all these greats?
Well, the easy answer to that would be just to point to my dear departed friend, Kobe Bryant, and the Mamba mentality, because he was continually seeking out people on that same level as he was, always curious about everything. I mean, he would just ask me a million questions about what I do. He had no desire to be a photographer, but he wanted to know what drove me. Kobe had this great saying that if you're not as obsessed with what you do as I am, we don't speak the same language. So I think all those guys that you mentioned, those professions, they all speak the same language. I mean, they could be speaking a different tongue, but they're speaking the same mental language of pushing themselves to a point where they have to push themselves even further, and that doesn't mean that there's not roadblocks. There's not, landmines along the way. There's not all kinds of mental health issues to deal with, and that's inherent in greatness, I think. But for all the people that you just mentioned, and all the people that I'm thinking of that came across through my life, they all just have this other gear. It's like the first time I sat in a Porsche, it was a friend of mine's Porsche, right? And saw that it had a 6th gear. I'm like, what the hell is that? The 6th I'd never seen a car with a 6th gear before, right? But it's kind of like that. The same thing. It's like an extra gear.
That is awesome. And, one of the other side about having a passion, a purpose combined with a profession is you have to make a living. And a lot of photographers or people that desire to work in sports never really reconcile how to monetize their skills, their capabilities within the context of what they want. What were some of the things that you were able to do, a little bit of the Brooklyn attitude, maybe, and able to, angle yourself, not only am I going to do what I love, but I'm going to actually make a living doing it?
Well, it's so interesting, David, because I didn't come from a household that really taught me anything about saving money, preparing for the future. My dad was a clinical psychologist, and we had a nice life. It was great, but my dad was always like buying the next thing, and he was always looking for bargains of stuff that he never needed, which I loved about him, but it never taught me anything. And so when I got to Art Center, which I was told is the top art college in the world. We were given one business class, one, and the entire time I was there. Taught, and thank God they actually gave us that class, because it was taught by this amazing guy named Errol Gerson, who is now in his 50th year teaching at Art Center. And I learned more from Errol than I probably could have learned from 20 business classes. But what I took from Errol, I also went and assisted in one of my teacher's studios. So I learned on the job, like how to manage a studio, how to manage a staff, how to pay bills, how to deal with vendors, taxes, all that stuff. My teacher, Bill Robbins, was very, very giving in that way. And he wanted me and the other assistants to learn that. So, when I teach, I always like to talk about, hey, you can be the greatest photographer on the face of the earth, but if you don't know how to do business and you're not somebody that people want to work with, you're going to starve. You might as well, give it up and do something else. So business is a huge part of it. I'm not very good at business. I got to tell you, I don't know really anything about accounting or any of that stuff. And what I've learned over the years, you just get people who do know that stuff. But I do know that I love the business of business. I love being in business. I have clients who've been with me, 35 years plus, and there's a reason that they keep coming back. There's a lot of photographers out there, and we pride ourselves in delivering over and over and over again.
Yeah, managing expectations and delivering. I think it's I deal with a lot of artists, and I went to Occidental College right down the street from you there.
Yeah.
And I own my own media company, so a lot of opposite brain side thinkers, and it's really interesting, the ones that at least can put things into the context of being on time, doing what you say. It means a lot. And, there's subtleties of success and capability, meaning the subtleties of success comes from the nuances of being kind, of being on time, of doing the simple business aspects. And then I think it does enhance the subtleties of capabilities, meaning, it's very subjective whether a picture, is resonating with, especially in sports, capturing that emotion and time and everything. So that's a great piece of advice for those people, especially nowadays, because there's so much media and so many opportunities within media. It's so easy. The point of entry is so low and the exposure is so big. I want kids to know, look, it's good to take a business course, watch them online. That's what I do, is work and show that. It's interesting. You also have been around not only a lot of people, but a lot of extraordinary events. And I always love to ask, I'm sure the Rose Bowl was right down the street in 1978 when you moved out. Warren Moon won the MVP, is my business partner. That's the first year I moved to San Diego as well. And the first Rose Bowl that I never got to see, because I had a single mom, a Jewish mom, who told me I'm going to the Rose Bowl, and I'm plopped out in front of the Art Center on Colorado. We're watching the parade, not the game. We can't afford to go to the game. I got to listen on the radio. Anyway, share with us from your experience your favorite moment that you've captured and what event it was or what it depicts.
Well, a few come to mind. I mean, the greatest assignment I ever had was being with the Dream Team for 7 weeks. I mean, it was like nothing that could ever compare with that. I was embedded with them. I was the lead photographer. My good friend Nat Butler also joined, but I was the guy from the inside, from the beginning, from day one of training camp in San Diego through the gold medal in Barcelona. So just to be a fly on the wall with those guys and to be put in that position of trust to be around them, and I didn't take it lightly. I actually was like a nervous wreck the entire time, basically, if you can believe it, because I didn't want to miss anything and I didn't want to screw up, and I also brought my dad to Monte Carlo when we were there, and that was great sharing that with him. So that as an assignment in a block was great. Recording Kirk Gibson's monumental home run in '88. I was there for that. Never heard a stadium as loud as to this day as Dodger Stadium was. The Lakers winning the championship in '85 in Boston Garden, which I think every Laker fan will probably say was their greatest championship ever. I was able to record that. And not only was I able to record that, but I got my first cover of Sports Illustrated from that series, which to me was like I had really made it. I mean, I had these benchmarks as a young photographer, and one of them was just to get an assignment from Sports Illustrated, which I got kind of early by a fluke because the photographer they had another assignment. So I ended up doing this Kings game and got actually a couple of pictures published. And then getting that cover was, I mean, I really felt like, wow, I think I belong in this club. This is great. That was 1985. And then, another chunk of time, but I can't downplay enough or give it enough credibility, how great that 20-year period with Kobe was. Just documenting him from day one. I mean, literally took his first picture as a Laker and his last picture of a Laker, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands in between, and all 5 championships, and then us, doing this book together, which, continues his legacy. I mean, that's the most remarkable accomplishment I think I have ever had and will ever have in my career.
Last question real quickly. Extraordinary career. Both of us have been around a lot of different things. And one of the things that I learned from Lee Steinberg that I wish I would have done early was, when I first became CEO, whenever he was around someone, he would say, Dave, ask him to take a picture with me. And so Lee has the old school albums, right? And so it was a little bit more difficult back then because we actually take pictures with, and all you had was 13 or 26, on your film, sometimes with a throwaway. But we would take them, and he had these extraordinary, it still does, that he would recruit with. He'd plop you down old school like grandma and show you his album. And, until I started working with Warren Moon and we started our own company, I started to do that. But I think of all the years, of, the greats like Magic Johnson and Larry Bird and all these people I was with that I never got to memorialize. What was the one shot you missed? What was the one thing was there one thing that you're like, oh my gosh, I missed it?
Is this a multiple part interview? Because this could go on forever. I missed a lot of shots, David. I got to tell you.
Give me one. Just give me one, because I love the flavor of it.
No, the one that sticks in my mind and that all of my colleagues continue to rib me about, Hall of Fame, no Hall of Fame, they could care less, was the 2000 Olympics. And I was there in Sydney. And you remember when Vince Carter dunked over that French guy? Through the French guy? Yeah. Missed it. I was right there. The photographer next to me, this is God's honest truth. It was his very first basketball game he ever shot. And he got the picture, and I didn't. I missed it. I was out of focus. I was using equipment that I shouldn't have been using. But that goes back to our very first question here, David, about preparation, because I never should have been using that equipment. I was not familiar with it. I had borrowed it because we were in a different lighting situation, whatever. But I kicked myself for my whole career about that. You can give me 1 million, Pulitzer Prize winners, but that one will always stick with me.
That's awesome. Well, I love the lesson of preparation, persistence, consistency. It really evolves to the passion and purpose and even profitability. And you are a Hall of Famer. What an extraordinary career so far. The good thing is you don't have to be 20 years old to take pictures, especially now. The cameras are so light. And they're going to get lighter and more powerful. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me. Andrew Bernstein with David Meltzer, Entrepreneurs, The Playbook.